The honourable member, Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and I rise, as others who have already spoken have done, to support the direction in which this bill is going, and in particular to discuss the SOP put forward by the Minister and the Chair. And I do pick up the point that both Ian Lees-Galloway and Paul Hutchison have made, that I too, as other MPs have been approached by members of the public deeply concerned about the easy availability of products like chronic and other similar cannabinoids. Dr Hutchison, you approve of that? Excellent. Other synthetic products similar to that which clearly have been sold and marketed in a way that is inappropriate and that most New Zealanders, I think, would deem to be not something they want to see in the corner dairy or in a place where their children would be going, and that the intervention that has now come in from the Minister is another stage in managing this process. The Minister did answer the questions that my colleague Ian Lees-Galloway put forward, and I understand that everybody acknowledges that this is a stopgap measure, that this is not, in fact, the long-term answer to the problem. And therefore, with any stopgap measure, there are going to be some issues. And the Minister has outlined the process which would allow getting products off the shelves quickly if they reappear. I guess the question we have to ask ourselves is there sufficient room in what is proposed for a product to be put on the shelves? The Gazette notice goes in once it's found, it's 7 days, it goes. The new product is already pre-prepared and that emerges, and we go through the same process every 7 days. And that's the weakness that we have. Now, I'm not overly criticising the Minister for that. I'm just saying that the gap in this process, in the absence of a full regime, is that theoretically the producers of these products could now be preparing a series of slightly different products that will be drip-fed into the market every 7 days, or every however long it is, from when the Gazette notice is put out to when it's actually enforced. And so that's, I mean, I don't think there's an answer to that question for the Minister really, but that is still the gap that we have because we have a stopgap measure like this in front of us. I don't know what that means for the stockpiling issue. I do think that will again create a situation whereby some people will be potentially stockpiling different products of a similar nature. And so while I think this is something we obviously support because it's an issue we have to deal with, these are products that have had demonstrably negative effects on people, the measures that the Minister is proposing today have gaps, and they're gaps that will be exploited by the producers of these products. Obviously, we simply then have to hope that the regime is surely only temporary and that we do move as quickly as possible to the Law Commission's report. And there has been criticism from the side of the House, and it is worth noting that we don't feel things have moved as quickly as they might have in response to that. Sorry, Mr Henley? No, that's right. That's right. Well, there's so much to criticise. That's the thing. But in this case, the Minister, we do congratulate the Minister for bringing this forward. But we do believe that the response to the Law Commission's report does need to move as quickly as possible. And it is, as my colleague says, time to think about a new regime when it comes to the Misuse of Drugs Act. And that is obviously what is contemplated in the Law Commission's report. And essentially, when you look at the Law Commission's report, what they want is to move to a situation where we have an act that's administered by the Ministry of Health, that's in fact a health-based act. And I think all of the things that I've heard, and as part of the Health Select Committee and more broadly, would point to that being the best basis for us to develop a drug-based regime, to base it on health effects. And it is still extraordinary to most people who I have interacted with about this situation that there isn't a testing regime in place before the products reach market. That's the fundamental thing that people simply can't understand. And in fact, Mr Chair, at the risk of at the risk of going slightly off topic, it was interesting to note the comments of one user of these synthetic cannabis products who's quoted in the Stuff website today. And when he said, his name's here, it's Phil Stevens, so he's given it to the newspaper. I'm sure he won't mind me making him famous in Parliament. And he said here, I've tried most of the different brands over the past year or so. Mr Chair?
I call the honourable member Grant Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Stevens said, I've tried most of the different brands over the past year or so. If you know the difference between the real stuff and the synthetic version, you can tell they're not the same thing, but a layman probably couldn't. Mr Stevens then went on to say he thought the 12-month ban on the substances was a good idea. So you've got a fan minister and one of the users. But what he then said, which is the point that I want to make, is he said, that's the 12-month ban, that's probably the best thing they can do. At least that way someone is doing some research and testing into this stuff. Now that's a user of the product noting that there actually hasn't been proper testing of these products. And from my point of view, Mr Chair, that has to be the priority, is to get a regime in place that actually tests products like this before they make it onto the shelves. It seems to me to be an extraordinary situation where that process is not in place, and one that members of the public look at and wonder how we could have allowed that to be. So we must move quickly, Mr Chair, to address that particular gap and create that regime that's robust, that also applies the principles that the Law Commission have suggested, which is around obviously reducing harm, and instead of the instant criminal approach to making sure there's a graduated response overall in terms of drugs, and making sure that we have an act that's based around the important role of the health system in managing that. Drugs are not just a criminal issue, they become a criminal issue, but they are a health issue primarily, and we must deal with them that way around. So it is, from our point of view, the SOP introduced by the Minister is something that we can support. We support it on the basis that we need to do something now, but I don't want our support to be interpreted as believing that this stopgap measure is the be-all and end-all. I think it has gaps. I think it has gaps that will be exploited, but I also believe that we need to move quickly and as quickly as possible to take on board the other recommendations of the committee. I am concerned around the stockpiling issue alongside the likely drip feeding of new products, and if the Minister had anything he wanted to say about that, I'd be grateful. But the Labour Party will support this SOP and the wider bill as well, but we do so knowing that there is much, much more to do.
Honourable Heather Roy.
Thank you,